Hi, this is Kylie Koo. Welcome to my studio. I'm really pleased to be doing a gel plate printing session today from my tidy and organised desk. It wasn't really, everything was just pushed off to the side, but never mind. But I'm going to be using two gel plates today. This bigger one, which I think is something like 8 by 10, and the smaller one, 5 by 7. And the reason I'm using the two will become clear in a moment. Now, I'll have a couple of brares there. One actually has a bit of thread caught round it, but I think it's still going to work okay. I didn't clean these, albeit I did clean off my gel plates today. They don't look clean because the underside isn't, and that big one is, it's just yellowed with age. So I'm delighted today to be using some stencils from the wonderful P.M.Artist Studio. I've featured their stencils before and I'll leave a link to that video, although I have actually used them in a lot of my projects. They sent this beautiful card with a beautiful message inside, one from each of them, and you know, that was very much appreciated. So I'm just going to show you these as I go through. So some of these were sample stencils and some were what they call imperfectly perfect. So the ones that just didn't make, you know, just weren't quite good enough for them selling. So that doesn't matter to me, I'm just delighted. So these are waves, both just slightly different, roughly ATC sized. So the envelope arrived just at the point where I got sick a few weeks ago. This is a Semic writing. Yeah, and this is really the first chance I have had to sit down and properly look at and play with these stencils. So I'm ever so grateful to them for sending them to me. So this is Water Babies. I'm just going to take you through them all. At the end of the day, I do not manage to use them all because there was so many here. I will go on to double speed once I've shown all the stencils, just to get through this a little bit quicker, but I had such a lot of fun. Sydney Orbs, I was really looking forward to getting these because I'd seen P, that's Patricia, use them. And yeah, the stencils that Patricia and Mariah make, and Mariah's husband is now involved in the process, they're just so different and so interesting. Very different to others you can get on the market. These, as it says, are the outer bits, so there's been something cut from in there and they've sent them along. So I'm going to be using them as well later. So it felt like Christmas when I got this, other than the fact that I felt ill and couldn't really appreciate them as much as possible. So this is Dazed Galactic Petticoat, and as you'll see, these are perfectly imperfect ones, but you know, they're pretty good as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, so some are samples. I'm just showing you the names of them all so that if you do want to have a look on their website, you know roughly what they are. I won't go over their names again as I'm using them. There's the odd bit where I had to poke out little bits, but that's fine. I mean, again, some bits, I think some of them just, they're imperfect because they probably didn't cut right through. So this is Tracery Mandala Mask, and again, I was looking forward to using these. Really nice. So this is Water Babies again, but this is a larger size stencil. Many of their designs come in different sizes, which I think is really good because you don't always want a huge one, and sometimes you do. And now we've got Twirly Teardrops on Celestial Snowshoes. What a fabulous name. So this was a set of 7. A number of them are ATC sized and one slightly bigger. Because this is the other thing they do, they will sell them in sets, sometimes a mixed set of designs, and sometimes they will sell, you know, like the petticoat ones there, that was a set of 3 in different sizes. And you can see all the different designs there. So yeah, just to say that their stencils are made from 74-pound Yupo. So Yupo is actually a synthetic, it's not a paper as such, and these really do hold up well to lots of use. You can of course wash them, but you don't have to. I do a bit of mix and match, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So I'm starting here with alizarin crimson. This is a Pebeo transparent paint. I really like this paint, and I particularly like it on the gel plate, and I hope that you'll see why in terms of the results that I get. So putting on quite a thin coat, and I'm just going to put that off to the side to let it dry. This is why I decided to bring the two plates out today, because sometimes I do want to be letting them dry. So I'm also going to put a coat onto my bigger plate, and again, not too thick. So just smoothing it out there, taking the excess off the brayer, taking another bit off, just to thin it out. I'm trying to do that very gently. I think when it's on double speed, it looks as though it's been done quite heavy, but it's not. So I'm now going to use Payne's Grey. I left it a few minutes there just as I had some coffee. So I'm going to put Payne's Grey on the top of my little plate. And personally, I think these two colours go really well together. The alizarin crimson and the Payne's Grey. So I've got that chevron type. I've just got a piece of carnival tissue paper, wet strength tissue paper. I use this all the time now, and for me it's fantastic on the gel plate. And actually I think I've reached a point now where I prefer using just tissue paper to paper on the gel plate, but I do use some today. So you'll see I've taken that off, and that's what I have left, and I'm now just going to lift this as well. So I now almost have the kind of positive and negative of the two. And I like the way that first one actually has the kind of almost the tram lines up the side. There's still a bit of stuff on there. I'm not going to take it off, but I'm going to bring in this Naples yellow. And again, this is a Pebeo paint, but this one's an opaque paint. And I'm just going to put some of this down. Now, I'm always about trying to lift as much pattern off as possible. Sometimes you get to the point where it's just not going to lift much off at all, you know, and that doesn't matter. Just leaving it a second while I clean the brayer, go back, pat it down more. Here it go, and there really wasn't much to lift other than the Naples yellow, but that doesn't matter, that goes off to the side and that will be used again. So a bit more of the Naples yellow on here. And again, I'm putting that off to the side. Now you will see that there's several little dents in my gel plate. It's just the age of it. I mean, I have had this, I don't know, I've had it a very long time. So there I am, where there's been little bits sticking in. All I've done is to take an awl and just poke them out. And some there that wouldn't come out, so that's why these are perfectly imperfect. But to me that doesn't matter, because I like things to be perfectly imperfect, to have a bit of a grunginess about them. So these suit me, sorry to say it, perfectly. So I've now got the Payne's Grey, and what I'm going to do with this, so my underpaint, the alizarin crimson, is dry, so I'm now just going to spread this out and over the stencils. Now, of course, some of these are very intricate, and I'm not sure if the paint is going to go into every little detail. So you'll see there I'm putting a bit more on. I started not putting on too much, because you can always add more, whereas to take it off is just that little bit harder. So spreading it out a bit more. And just taking another piece of tissue paper, and you see I'm working that in, smoothing it down. Hoping that I'm going to pick up some of the detail of the stencil. And you'll see that that's picked up the Payne's grey from the stencil, but also just a little bit of the alizarin crimson below. So I'm now going to take these off, and I really like what's left on the plate there. So now I'm going to take a piece of white paper, and it's just plain printer paper, just copy paper. I'm going to put that down. Again, just rubbing over the plate to try and pick up the design. Having a little sneak peek there. Back down, and I'm going to pull it again just now. And again, I think this turns out lovely. And although there's a lot of white there, what I would do with this is to get something like a fluid acrylic and go back over it. Now, I was excited about what was left on the plate here, because I knew I could get something more from that. So I'm just touching it to make sure it's dry. I'm going back in with the Naples yellow, and I think these three colours, the alizarin crimson, the Payne's grey and the Naples yellow, I think they just worked brilliantly together. There's just something about them. So I've got tissue paper here. Now you see I put it down, but you'll see I do have a few little wrinkles in it. Now I think that was partly because of the way I had my paper stored. I'd moved a lot of things in my studio that had kind of got pushed to the side and had, it wasn't best stored, so it has a few wrinkles in it, but that doesn't bother me again. You know, it's going to be grungy and that suits me. So I tried to have a sneak peek at it, but decided I'm going to leave it a bit longer. So back to the small plate meantime. So that's got the Naples yellow on it, and I'm now going to put the alizarin crimson on top this time. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure that your stencils are stuck down. You know, just pat them into place. Otherwise, when you go on the top, they could slip. It happens. It's nothing to worry about, you know. Anything that comes off can be used as collage one way or another. So again, back on with the tissue paper. Going all around it, working into the little bits of the stencil there. Just trying to get my fingers in there. And the good thing about the tissue paper is you can leave it on longer than the ordinary copy paper. See there, just taking my palette knife. It's not sharp, it's just a plastic, it's rounded on the edge. So I'm just using that to get into the little details of the pattern. And there we have it. So just a little bit of the Naples yellow showing through onto that print. So deciding here what I'm going to do, just having a think about it, and I push it off to the side and come back to this one. So again, I'm smoothing it down. You can see almost a pattern coming through already. Table's getting congested at this point. So here I go, I'm slowly pulling this. This tissue paper is strong. There's going to be little bits left on the plate, but not too much at all. You can see the wrinkles that the paper have created. And I just love this. Yes, I loved that one. Wrinkles and all. It just had such an aged look to it, a distressed look to it. And as I say, I just thought those three colours went really well together. And look at all that's left still on the plate there. So at this point I could have wiped that off, but I decided not to. So instead I'm using this iridescent blue-green. Again, this is a P.M.Artist paint from their Dinah range. I'm going to get this down. Again, not too thick, and I'm trying to get an even coat. So I'm going to take this stencil. This was one that came in the set of 7, and I've seen Patricia and Mariah use this, and I think this is a great stencil. And I'm just going to work this in. Now I know I'm going to get that border around the edge, and I'm okay with that. Most of the papers I pull off the gel plate either go into collage, or I will use them on artist trading cards or kind of postcard size. Rarely would I use something in its entirety as it comes off. So anything that's coming off around the edge, you know, we'll just go into the kind of collage box. And there we go. So I'm going to lift that up carefully. And I like what's left on the plate, including all the little bits around the edges. But I'm going to leave it to dry. So just touching this to see if it's dry or... So I'm now taking the iridescent blue black from Dinah, from the P.M.Artist Dinah range. I do like these P.M.Artist Dinah paints, the iridescent paints, a lot. Okay, so I've got a piece of paper this time. I'm going to see what I can get from this. And of course you can never quite tell how it's going to turn out. That's half the fun of gel plate printing. So this one's actually come out quite muted, but I love it, you know, and for some of my mark making collage papers, that will just go perfectly with them. So putting a bit more of the blue black on. Another bit of tissue, always just trying to see what I can get up and off the plate. So pushing it to the side meantime. Checking this, it was still a little bit damp in places. Now if it's damp and I put another colour on, there is a danger that it will mix. So you'll see there I'm going back, checking it in the middle, giving it another minute while I have another little bit of coffee, and now I'm going back in with the alizarin crimson. So it's mixing a tiny bit, but not too much. And I'm quite excited about this because there's all those lines, the crease lines from before, And I'm thinking, oh, this could be a cracker, this could be really, really good. And part of me is saying, get this paper up now, get it up now. And another part of me is saying, oh, leave it just another second, see what you can get. And it was looking good at that point. Could I get another bit up? And I kept going and kept going and kept going. And I went too long, as you will see in just a second, because then the paper stuck to the plate and part of it was left on. I'm not worried, I can see how it would have looked, and the bit that's still there I will use for collage. So there is nothing lost other than that little bit of paper that's sticking to my plate there. There's nothing lost. So you see, just trying to rub that off. At this point I had a thought, and yep, I'm thinking to myself, I'll take some of the Naples yellow, which is kind of thicker and heavier, still got some of the alizarin crimson in it. I'm going to go over that and I'm going to see if I can lift it all up, including that bit of paper. I can still see the bits of paper there. I'm going to use the tissue paper because I feel that there's more chance of me lifting it with the tissue paper than with another bit of white paper. So rubbing it well in, especially across the area where the paper's sticking, and again I'll put it off to the side. Bringing this one back. So not much of the stencil left, but again that is something I can use again. So looking now at the iridescent stencil and just deciding which way I would put it on. So there I'm just patting it down to make sure that it doesn't move on the plate. So I've got my Payne's grey again and I'm just going to smooth that out. Now I actually put this on too thick. I should have put less on, but there you have it. It's just the way it goes sometimes. Going to wipe it off from the edges there. Although I think I did manage to actually push some under the edge. So I lift that. And again it goes off to the side because I want it to dry. So I come back to this, smoothing it out again, just seeing what else I can get from here. Certainly getting something. Didn't really lift the paper though, so that's okay. There's a couple of little bits came up, but not much at all. So at this point I just had to go off and clean it. So back to the alizarin crimson. And there must have been a bit of the yellow or something still on there. I could see it, but that's okay. Kept finding little bits of paper in there. So taking that one, and this is just simply to add a bit of colour to this. Just testing that. As I say, it was quite thick, so it was taking a little while to dry. Okay, here we go. And that's lifted it up nicely and has just added some colour to that. And I have some thoughts about what I want to use that particular one for. So, twirly teardrops on celestial snowshoes next. So, you know, that paper might have been deemed a fail. Maybe's yes, maybe's no. Thinking about it, nothing's a fail really, because that will be either used again or we'll go for collage. So rather a lot came out at that point. I think there was a big blob inside it. So now just spreading that out and just using my palette knife to spread it out, trying to get it into all the little bits of intricate pattern. So, you know, just to say, I'm not sponsored by P.M.Artist Studio in any way. I use their stencils and masks because basically I think they're great, and P&M, Patricia and Mariah, are great. They have live streams. I think now, it used to be every Sunday, I think it's now every Sunday, Tuesday, and I think Thursday. The Thursday one used to be for their group, but I think it might be more an open one now. There I'm lifting it. Now I did do something wrong here. That should have went off to the side to dry, but I got so excited because I thought the pattern was beautiful. I got excited. The paint was wet, it was quite thick, and I put this down on top of it. And of course, basically all I did was I squished the paint down, so I didn't quite get the same beautiful pattern. It still turns out nice, but you know, all I'm doing, especially rubbing over it there, I'm just squishing it down further. But you live and learn and live, so that's the way of it. So yes, I'll leave links to P.M.Artist Studio channel below, and I'll also leave a link to the shop. And if you are interested in something there and you know you're not quite seeing it, I know some of the things they can do in different sizes, so you know you can always email them and they will help you out as best they can. So I'm going to pull this. Put it back down, try and get a bit more of this up. I thought the Payne's grey with the alizarin crimson on top looked really nice. Quite Asian looking, I thought oriental looking. And there's little bits of the blue that must have been on the plate still, so again giving it that kind of distressed look. And at this point I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to clean that off, I will try and pick it up some other way. I've got that piece. Gosh, I've used that much of this alizarin crimson today, I'll probably need to go and buy a new one soon. And that's one of my more recent acquisitions. Now you see, I was trying to line that up, didn't do it terribly well, had to smooth the paint out again. So now off to the side. So here we go, we'll see how this one looks. And it's looking pretty good, other than I lost some of the detail because, as I say, I did it when the paint was wet and I squished it down. But I still like it. So I'm going to go back to this. I'm thinking, yep, there is something I can get here. But what colour do I want? So I'm going to use that blue-black. And of course the paint that's already down is the Payne's grey. Now, if you've never tried painting on fabric, gel printing, that is on fabric, P&M did a video recently, and I'll leave a link to that because it was really good. They covered it in their live stream, but they also did a kind of shorter video on it where they print on t-shirts, and their results were absolutely amazing. So I'll specifically leave a link to that video as well as to their channel more generally and their website and shop. So put that one off to the side, back to the small one. And it's not lifted much of that at all. So I'm thinking what I'll do now is I'll take a couple of the smaller ATC size stencils, and I'm just going to treat this as something for mark making. So whatever I get off it, it will go into my mark making kind of collage pieces. So again, just going to smooth that out using the palette knife there. And then I revert to the brayer. So pulling that off, and I'm just going to try and lift this right away. I don't wait for it to dry this time, but I do put it off to the side. So smoothing this out a bit more. And here we go. And I can see that it's lifted most of that. And again, I think that looks fabulous, and I love the distressed look of that as well. I love the fact that there is some of the crimson coming through as well as that blue-black, which is obviously the dominant colour there. Just lifting that, and I got most of that off there, including the little bits from the Asemic stencil. So looking at these now and wondering what I'll do with these. So my idea was to actually use some of the stencils inside. So I'm just seeing how they fit together here, and if I can actually get one inside the other where I'll get both designs fully. So at the moment I'm just kind of lining them up, just checking how they'll be. So I've got those in place. And I'm now going to take this Hobbycraft turquoise, and this is a P.M.Artist iridescent green yellow. And I'm just going to use the turquoise on both stencils. Trying to keep it just within the stencil there, but I will wipe off any that goes over it. Trying to make sure that I've got it completely in the pattern. So just wiping around the edges. I decide to take them off and then to wipe it, it'll come off easier then. And I just had a piece of kitchen towel with a little bit of water on it, not too wet. And that made it easier to get off. Gosh, I was being pretty careful with this one. So now I couldn't find one. I laid them both down and couldn't find the other. It's funny how that can happen, you know, such a small space and yet things go walkabout. So I guess we'll come back to that. I must have decided to switch off while I looked for it. So back onto the small gel plate with some of the crimson going down again, and just looking at doing a small sized one while the big plate is being used. So I think there I was thinking about, I want to just fill in that bottom right hand corner, just put something on that so that it's not empty. So there you go, I've just gone and got that, overlapping them, that's fine, and it just means that every bit of the plate is covered. I only had a great big piece of tissue here, so I didn't want to stop and cut it, or the paint would have dried, so I'm just using that. Trying to get into all those little bits of detail, just pushing my finger right down and into it. Obviously harder where it's a double stencil, but that actually came up really nicely. And liking what's left on the plate. So now that's been left to dry, and I'm coming back to this, and again just checking that it's dry, because I will be going over it with more paint. So although I'd worked this out the first time, I'm now trying to remember which one went with which, just trying to get it in fully and trying to centre it as much as possible. Looking there to see if they were the same. Turning it around, moving it about, and then I decide to go for it. This is where I've spoken about perfection over a couple of weeks, and saying that I'm a kind of recovering perfectionist, but there's moments like that where I realise that, yeah, not quite. I do revert back to it. So just using that yellow-green or green-yellow on top, smoothing it out with the brayer. I think there is still a bit of another colour on there, so it changed the colour a little bit. But I was really keen to see how this would turn out. And I thought that was going to look pretty good. So of course the turquoise that's underneath will actually, when I lift this, it will be the top cover. So you see my paper wrinkled a little bit there again, but we're not going to worry about that. Really pressing it down. And again, going to leave it for a minute or two. So, back to the Naples yellow. I think there's still some green on my brayer, but I didn't clean it off. Just letting it mix together on there. This time using a piece of paper. And there wasn't much came up that time, so I put another piece and another brayer of paint down. I didn't add any more, it was just what was left on the brayer. And I just went off to I just got another bit of plain paper, just trying to lift this, smoothing it down, and that I thought was lovely as well. Again, quite distressed looking, but it just shows that sometimes just a little bit of paint will lift it, whereas a lot won't. So just going to take this again, Back with the alizarin crimson. Just using the brayer to get the paint in. And all I'm going to do is take that piece that hadn't worked as I thought it would to begin with, and I'm just going to lift that pattern this time. And right away I can see it's going to come off, and again I thought that was lovely. And of course there's still more on the plate. It's a plate that keeps on giving, but I'm going to let it dry to begin with. Go back to this. And pulling that. A few little bits left, but not much, and I think that turned out really nice. And again, I have a bit of an idea as to how I'm going to use that. I'm just cutting that excess paper off there because I'm going to use that for something else. I usually try and cut my paper down beforehand so that I've got it all ready. So taking the blue again, and just going to lift the pattern with that. Got the tissue paper this time. So this is Carnival tissue paper, I think I said that already, and I will try and leave a link to them below as well. This is really my favourite tissue paper. I really like working with that. You'll see I lifted that and it just lifted the top coat of paint off. Going in again right away with another piece of paper, another piece of tissue paper. I left it a minute or two, literally just a minute or two, came back to it, and there we go, it's lifted everything off the plate. So a quick run through everything. That was the sheet that kind of stuck to the page, but still some lovely bits in it. Like how unusual that is. Plain bits will get used again. The chevron, I liked the stripes that came along it, even though not intended. Even those little bits, lots of lovely pattern and texture on them. Definitely liked working with those colours today. You know, the intricacy of a number of these stencils and masks is just wonderful. So again, I want to say a big thank you to P.M.Artist Studio for sending me this. I had such fun playing with it. Didn't get through them all, but I will be using the stencils in lots of different projects to come. And of course I will leave all the links if you want to check them out. That one I love. The more I look at it, the more I like it. And although it's just a happy accident, I actually like all the lines in the paper. That monoprint one, black and white, I think looks fabulous, as does this one. I love this. And my favourite of all today, yeah, that to me is just gorgeous. So if you've made it this far, thank you ever so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. So please do take care. If you get a chance, check out P.M.Artist Studio. Thanks again. Bye for now.